Yesterday, a single chipmaker's forecast came in slightly weaker than expected. Within hours, South Korea's stock market fell 9% and tripped a circuit breaker. US futures dropped, and hundreds of billions of dollars in value evaporated. The reason markets are this fragile is hiding in a number almost nobody outside the industry knows. More than 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips are made on one island. By one company. Not most of the design. The actual physical manufacturing. Every cutting-edge Nvidia AI accelerator. Every new iPhone brain. Every leading data center processor on Earth is etched in the fabs of a single Taiwanese firm called TSMC. This is the story of how the entire digital economy came to balance on a single point, told through the numbers. Let's start with the raw scale, because it is genuinely hard to believe. In 2025, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, booked $122.5 billion in revenue. That alone is a large number. But the share is the shocking part. TSMC captured 69.9% of the entire global foundry market, that is, the business of manufacturing chips that other companies design. By the third quarter of 2025, that share had climbed past 72%. To put it plainly, out of every $10 the world spends having advanced logic chips physically made, roughly 7 go to one firm on one island. And it gets more extreme as the chips get smarter. When you narrow the view to the truly cutting edge, the 7-nanometer process and everything below it, the silicon that powers artificial intelligence, that category made up 74% of TSMC's wafer revenue in a single quarter. Its newest 3-nanometer node alone accounted for 23%. Industry analysts estimate TSMC produces well over 90% of the most advanced chips on the planet. There is no second supplier with anything close. Samsung, the nearest rival, holds single-digit market share at the leading edge. Intel, once the king of chipmaking, is barely a footnote in contract manufacturing. To grasp what that dominance means, picture the device you're watching this on. The chip running it was almost certainly designed in California or Korea, but the actual silicon, the physical wafer with billions of transistors carved into it, was overwhelmingly likely born in a clean room in Hsinchu or Tainan. The same is true of the servers training the AI models rewriting the global economy, the processors in modern cars, the radios in 5G towers. This is not a competitive market with a strong leader. It is, functionally, a near monopoly on the most important manufactured object of the 21st century, and the gap between first place and everyone else is widening, not closing. So how did one company end up owning the most advanced factory floor on Earth? The answer is a bet nobody else believed in. For decades, the giants of the chip world, Intel, Texas Instruments, Motorola, both designed and manufactured their own chips. Manufacturing was seen as a cost center, the unglamorous back end. In 1987, a Taiwanese engineer named Morris Chang flipped that logic on its head. He founded TSMC as a pure-play foundry, a company that would manufacture chips for everyone and design nothing of its own, competing with none of its customers. At first it looked like a low-margin afterthought, but it unlocked something powerful. Because TSMC didn't design chips, hundreds of companies could design them without ever building a multi-billion-dollar factory. Nvidia, Apple, Qualcomm, AMD, an entire generation of chip designers exists because they didn't have to manufacture. And every one of them funneled their most advanced work to the same place. That concentration created a flywheel. Each new manufacturing generation, from 28 nanometers down to 16, 7, 5, and now 3, costs exponentially more to develop. A single leading-edge fab today can cost $20 billion or more. Only the player with the most customers and the most volume can afford to keep climbing that cliff. Every node, the field thinned. Companies that fell a generation behind found it almost impossible to catch up. Because the physics gets harder and the bills get bigger at exactly the moment your revenue falls. TSMC didn't just win the race. It made the race so expensive that almost nobody else can afford to run it anymore. There is a second, quieter moat too. Trust. Because TSMC competes with none of its clients. A company like Apple or Nvidia can hand over its most secret, valuable designs without fear that its manufacturer will one day become its rival. Compare that to Samsung, which both makes chips for others and designs its own phones and processors that compete with those very customers. That conflict of interest has steered the most sensitive cutting-edge work to neutral Taiwan again and again. Decades of reliability, world-leading manufacturing yields, and a refusal to compete with its own customers turned a low-margin idea into the most defensible business in technology. For more than a decade, the symbol of TSMC's success was simple: Apple. The iPhone's processors were its flagship product, and Apple was reliably its single biggest customer, accounting for around a quarter of revenue. Then artificial intelligence changed everything. In 2025, for the first time in over 10 years, Apple was dethroned. The new number one customer is Nvidia. Consider how fast this happened. In 2024, Nvidia made up roughly 11% of TSMC's revenue, less than half of Apple's share. By the end of 2025, Nvidia had surged to 19%, about $23.4 billion, more than double the prior year, while Apple slipped to 17%. The cause is the global stampede to build AI. The category TSMC calls high-performance computing, which includes Nvidia's AI server chips, ballooned to 55% of the company's net revenue in the fourth quarter. Read that again. More than half of the output of the world's most important factory is now AI silicon. This is why a wobble in one AI chip forecast can crater stock markets from Seoul to New York. The valuations of Nvidia, of the cloud giants, of half the technology sector, all rest on a steady stream of leading-edge chips. And that stream has, in practice, exactly one source. When demand is roaring, this concentration prints extraordinary profits. But it also means the global economy has wired its most important growth engine to a single, irreplaceable supplier, and the market knows it. Every fear about AI demand is, underneath, a fear about whether those wafers keep flowing. And the shift from Apple to Nvidia tells you something deeper about where value is migrating. A smartphone chip is made by the hundreds of millions, at a relatively modest price each. An AI accelerator is a far larger, far more complex piece of silicon, sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and built on the very latest process with cutting-edge advanced packaging that stitches multiple chips together, a specialty TSMC also dominates. As the world's computing demand tilts from phones in pockets to warehouses full of AI servers, the chips get bigger, denser, and more expensive, and the manufacturing gets harder. That trend doesn't loosen TSMC's grip, it tightens it, because fewer and fewer players on Earth can build at that frontier at all. This is where the numbers stop being a business story and become a geopolitical one. Analysts have a name for Taiwan's chip dominance: the Silicon Shield. The theory is that because the world depends so completely on Taiwanese chips, the major powers have a powerful incentive to keep the island stable and its factories running. The shield, in this view, is also a deterrent, but concentration is a double-edged sword. The same fact that protects Taiwan also makes it the single greatest point of failure in the global economy. A natural disaster, a prolonged blockade, an earthquake near the fabs, or any disruption in the Taiwan Strait would not just hurt Taiwan, it would halt the production of the advanced chips that the entire modern world runs on. With no backup line anywhere, studies of such a scenario routinely put the cost in the trillions of dollars, dwarfing the supply shocks of the pandemic. This is the uncomfortable truth behind the headlines: the most digitized, automated, AI-driven civilization in history has funneled its most critical manufacturing into a concentration that would make any risk manager wince. Governments have noticed. The United States, Japan, and the European Union have all launched enormous subsidy programs to pull some chip manufacturing back onto their own soil. The motivation is no longer just economic competitiveness. It is national security. In an age where chips run everything from fighter jets to power grids to the AI models reshaping the economy, depending on a single island for 90% of them has come to look less like an efficiency and more like an existential gamble. The pandemic offered a small preview. When a handful of factories stalled, The world discovered that a missing chip worth a few dollars could idle an entire car assembly line worth millions, leaving finished vehicles sitting in lots waiting for one tiny component. Automakers alone lost an estimated hundreds of billions in output. Now imagine that shock. But at the leading edge, with no substitute supplier and no quick fix, the chips that AI, defense, and the global financial system depend on, all sourced from the same narrow strip of coastline. That is the scenario keeping strategists in Washington, Tokyo, and Brussels awake at night. And it is why the next chapter of this story is being written not in Taiwan, but thousands of miles away. Which brings us to the most expensive insurance policy in corporate history. Under pressure from Washington and the pull of its biggest market, TSMC has committed to a staggering $165 billion of investment in the United States. Centered on Arizona, 3 new fabrication plants, 2 advanced packaging facilities, and a research center, to fuel its global expansion. TSMC's board approved a 2026 capital budget of between $52 and $56 billion in a single year. And it may not stop there. Reports suggest a proposed US-Taiwan trade deal could push the Arizona commitment toward $465 billion and around 11 fabs, in exchange for lower tariffs, though neither side has confirmed those figures. On paper, this looks like the world finally de-risking. But here is the catch: the numbers reveal. Building a fab is the easy part. Taiwan's true advantage isn't just buildings, it's an ecosystem built over 40 years, tens of thousands of specialized engineers, a dense web of local suppliers, and an operational culture that runs fabs at yields competitors struggle to match. You can pour concrete in Arizona in a few years. You cannot copy 4 decades of accumulated know-how that fast. And the most advanced processes are still developed and ramped first in Taiwan. So even as hundreds of billions flow toward diversification, the leading edge, the chips that actually matter for AI, remains overwhelmingly concentrated on one island. The world has noticed its dangerous dependence, and it is spending fortunes to fix it. But for this decade at least, the uncomfortable reality stands. The most important factory on Earth still has one address. And almost everything we are building next runs through it. If a number ever rewired how you see the world, subscribe. We break down one story like this every single day.